Bulk number 31 is Tony Currie. Tony made his State of Origin debut off the bench in Game 3 of 1982, the first year 3-match series were played. TC played 15 games for the Maroons, scoring 3 tries. He also played 7 test matches for Australia. Tony was a member of the 1988 Canterbury Grand Final winning side and also played in the Brisbane Broncos inaugural Premiership winning team in 1992. Tony Currie, thanks for joining us. What does it mean to you to be a FOG, part of this community?
Well, it's when you come into a building like this and realise, wow, we started from nothing. It was just a game in 1980, led by Arthur Beetson, and everyone said it would fail, and it's turned into this juggernaut that is probably the pinnacle of Australian sport, especially between New South Wales and Queensland. And you walk into a building that we have and you realise, wow, things are going forward, and I'm just happy to be part of that, making my debut in 82 and seeing how things have grown. It's a wonderful experience. It's wonderful to get together with all the FOGs, and for that matter, anyone that's played for Queensland, I appreciate and I'd love to get to meet. So a great honour. It'll stay with me till the day I get buried, or and I just so proud.
What was it like back in 82 when you were making your debut? The feeling of representing Queensland at that origin level. What were your memories of that time?
Well, I'm playing for the bottom team, West, and that origin game was on a Tuesday night, and they let a lot of players play. Well, all the players played on the Saturday and the Sunday in Sydney. And Graham Quinn got injured, and therefore there was a shuffle on the Sunday night, and I found myself playing on Sunday at Purtell Park and finding that I'm in the origin side to fly to Sydney the next morning for the Tuesday game. And it was so fast, it was furious, and I was only 19, not a very big type of guy, and I thought, wow, I'm going from the bottom team in Brisbane now to come and play against the cream of New South Wales in a third and deciding origin match. And well, trepidation isn't the word, mate.
So what was that? Was that a good thing, I suppose, the fact that it was only literally 48 hours and you didn't have time to stew on it? What was it like doing that as a 19-year-old?
Well, I missed the flight because I partied on a bit too strong with my mates in celebration. But back then, I think you had TAA and Ansett were only like 20 minutes apart, so I jumped on the next flight, and Darryl Gatley, the trainer, picked me up at Sydney Airport, took me to Rushcutters Bay Travel Lodge. He said, Mr. Beetson's around there, wants to meet you. So I go around to meet Arthur Beetson, and I'm in awe. Here I am meeting a bloody childhood hero. Knock on the door, and he comes out, goes, "Oh, good on you, lad, how are you going? You're rooming with John Dowling," another guy I respected, and went to meet John Dowling. And back in those days, you had a double bed and a single bed. And I put my bags on the single bed, and John said, no, son, you can have the double bed, just relax. I'm an old hand at this. I'll take the single bed. This is your first game. I want you to be relaxed. And I never forget that.
And in those days, of course, there were no Brisbane Broncos team in the New South Wales comp. So the local Brisbane comp was still strong, and there was a lot of players in that Queensland side that played in that local comp that you would have played in, week out. Wally Lewis, of course, being one of those. Did that make it, and Gino, did that make it a bit easier for you, having known those guys locally, as opposed to the guys that came back from Sydney? Yeah,
it certainly did, Mark. We all hated New South Wales together. Didn't matter whether you were Valleys, Brothers, Redcliffe, East or West. Once you came together, and I think that was indicative of it in our Brisbane games as well when we came together in Brisbane. But yeah, once we were just so united, it was a magical thing that, McAuliffe, in his hindsight, I don't think he would have believed we could be so united so quickly, so fast. And, we won a lot of those games in the 80s, and a lot of those teams were 85, 90% Brisbane Rugby League players.
That first game, what are your memories of the actual game itself as opposed to getting down there and getting ready for it?
Well, as you know, FCG on a Tuesday night with the New South Wales crowd baying for blood. It's a long walk, isn't it, from the dressing rooms to the field, and that's what I remember. And I got on for the last 10 minutes, and we managed to hold on and win and beat New South Wales 2-1. But the celebrations afterwards were magnificent. As a 19-year-old, you can imagine, catch the flight down on Sunday night, Monday morning, bang, Origin, clean up the series win on Tuesday, and then back into the last team in the competition in Brisbane.
What did it mean to you after a couple of games on the bench to then start in an Origin match?
Yeah, it was always my goal. I was kind of like a work in progress. I had to go and actually prove myself, and I always thought, well, maybe I fluked it in that 82, and I don't, and I got known for he can come on the bench and he can play centre, he can play 5'8", he can play winger, fullback, etc. So I was probably the first person ticked to be a reserve, but I really wanted to make that first 13 side, and it took a lot of. I stuffed up a bit in the mid 83, 84. I broke my arm in 83, decided to miss the whole season, had the good life. Finally had to knuckle down in 84, and 85 I went and pursued England, which I think was a turning point for me. And then came back in 86, too late to qualify for the Queensland side. And then from 87, after I went down to the Bulldogs, it just became like I became a tradesman.
But also, TC, I mean, we're talking about an era where, and we're just talking about Queensland here, not, the New South Wales as well, in an era where some of the greatest centres to have ever played the game were playing as well. I mean, Gene Miles, Mal Meninga, Chris Close, they just roll off the tongue. And you're in there competing against those players as well.
Yeah. It's a strange thing. You're looking at them, and every week when you're in Sydney, you're playing against Michael O'Connor, Andrew Eddinghausen. Every team back in the 80s had quality centres. And I really wasn't known as a centre. But the turning point for me was when I went to Leeds. And I played 2 seasons at Leeds. I had to grow up. I lived with a few Australian guys there, but basically on my own, make my own way. Had no fullback. It was succeed or nothing else. Had to succeed. And unfortunately, I got into a great team, and I had a really good 5'8" called John Holmes, played for Leeds. He holds the record for games played. He was a magnificent 5'8". He was getting to the end of his career, but he used to look after me tremendously. Beautiful passer of the ball. He'd just say, "Hey lad, just run that hole, I'll give you the ball." And I'd do it, and bang, I'd score a try. And I just started to grow as a player. And how I got to go to Canterbury was because Malcolm Clift, who was an ex-Canterbury coaching staff or coach, ended up coaching that last year at Leeds, and then he recommended me to Bullfrog, and that's how I got down to the Dogs.
And won a premiership.
I've got to tell you a funny story. I should have won a premiership in 86 with the Dogs, because that's when I went down there. I actually physically played in that semi-final series, but I tore a hamstring and I wasn't fit to play. I had a fitness test the Saturday before the grand final. I failed it. I sat on the line in number 26, and Phil Sigsworth replaced me. What happened to Phil Sigsworth? Sent off, and we lose 4-2. Maybe if I played.
Yeah, you never know. But that was the first of 2 premierships. So you're at Leeds, but you don't end up at Canterbury straight away though, do you?
No, I'm at Leeds, and because it's the winter season, which I love because I never trained in the off-season, had no off-season for 5 seasons straight. It was fantastic. So I'd play here at West, go to Leeds, come back from Leeds to Redcliffe, from Redcliffe back to Leeds, finish in 86 at Leeds, come back down to West, and then picked up by Canterbury before the deadline, and I'm down in Sydney. So I'm at Leeds, Brisbane and Sydney all in the 1 year. It was a great trip.
So then how did you end up back at Brisbane? How did you come home?
Well, bit devious, that one. Bullfrog wanted to sign me. We were playing fantastic football in 88. I'd made my debut for Australia on the wing, and Peter Moore was our manager in the Australian side. And on one of the games in Origin, I said to Wayne Bennett, "You're looking for a centre?" He let everyone go out of the room, closed the door and said, "Yeah, we are." And basically discussed terms with me. John Rebo flew down while I was in camp with the Australian side. I'd signed my contract across the road at a local pub, came back. The boys were around the piano having a bit of a sing-song, and Peter Moore sees me and says, "Oh, my little bulldog, come on over here." The bulldog had just become a Bronco. but I kept it a well-guarded secret, and I had to tell him that I wasn't going to sign, and he wasn't, you know, he was very upset about that. He thought he had me. I just wanted to come home. That year, it was Expo, Brisbane, won a grand final, got married. It was just a perfect time for me.
So what did it mean to you to be part of that Broncos inaugural premiership winning side?
Well, I always wanted to come back to Brisbane and settle down, and my life here was in Brisbane, and to be part of that and get paid quite well. I mean, I had a job at Power Brewing. I wrote a column in the Courier Mail. I did B105. We were out constantly doing promotional work all over Queensland. It was an exciting time, very exciting time. But during that period, my contract was for 3 years only, and I snapped an Achilles tendon in 1990. So I went 89, 90, and I was never the player. I got stronger, but I didn't have the acceleration I had. And I was in the last year of my contract, and John Rebo calls me in and said, TC, I've been told by Wayne Bennett to offer you 1 more year, but you will retire. And I said, why 1 more year? I'm broken down. He said, because you've been good for the club. You've been great, and he just wants to reward you. And I got the biggest contract I've ever signed for the last year when I was a broken down hack. I'd snapped Achilles tendon, I'd had shoulder surgery, and I managed to get on and play the last 10, 15 minutes in a grand final for the Broncos. So I thank Wayne Bennett for that.
You mentioned your international career, 7 tests for Australia. What was it like being told for the first time you were going to represent your country?
You don't believe it. You can't believe it. Having beaten New South Wales 3-0 in Origin and virtually whipping their pants, you would think you might be half a chance. But until you get called out, it's pie in the sky stuff. And to make my debut in the 100th test match against Great Britain is phenomenal. And my mum, my auntie, relatives all drove down for the game, and we managed to beat England, and it was a terrific time. Yeah.
So going from that boy who started as a 10-year-old, and here you are playing in a grand final in 92 after having played 15 Origins, 7 tests, and played in England and played in Sydney and Brisbane. When did you reflect and say, what has just happened here? What sort of career have I had?
Yeah, it's like I'm a quiet achiever, Mark. I've won a Rothmans gold medal. I've got a Daily M Centre of the Year. I've won Panasonic Cups, World Club Challenge, grand finals, test matches. You name it. I've done everything anyone can do in the game. And I look back, and I just want to leave something for my boys. So, gee, the old man was not bad. But I very rarely get in there and talk to them about my career and all that. They'll come into my joint and see a Rothmans gold medal sitting on the mantelpiece, and have a look at it and go, geez, and all that stuff. But I'm a take it piece by piece guy. I think. It's funny that we've got an 88 reunion coming up for the Canterbury Bulldogs, and I know Phil Gould's going to ask me, so do you think, would you have thought we could win the grand final? It was the furthest thing from my mind. Like I said earlier, every week I had to play against Michael O'Connor, Andrew Eddinghausen, Greg Florimo, Mal Meninga, Peter Jackson. Just the names were endless. So you were just flat out getting up ready to play who you're going to play that weekend. You never thought about winning a grand final, and all of a sudden you're there and you do it, and you go back and go, well, how did we get here? And I think it's just taking it piece by piece, which is what I've done all through my footy career.
Did you realise at the time when you were playing Origin that what it would grow into? Because even though it was big in the 80s, it was in its development stage and getting bigger. I mean, Arthur started it, Wally continued it, and as I mentioned before, some of the greatest players ever played the game, played in the era in which you played. But it just seems to be getting bigger. What was it like being in the middle of it at the time?
Well, very funny. 86, I came back and I joined Redcliffe. And first Origin match, we're up at Lang Park. It's pouring rain. And I'm in the out at the old scoreboard end, and Queensland are getting touched, and my mate hits me in the rib cage and said, "You'll be there next game." And I went, "Nah, you're kidding me," and I was. But, you know, we just didn't think it was going to be like it was. But there was such a hatred of New South Wales. I think that was the binding thing in the 80s. Like we said earlier about all the Brisbane guys, when we came together, we were united. We'd play hard, and, you know, we'd go to a nightclub called the Court Jester on, say, a Wednesday night, and you'd see all the Brisbane club guys. Oh, they're the Redcliffe boys, they're the Brothers boys over there. Oh, look at the Valleys guys, don't go near them, you know, and all that stuff. We're playing them this weekend. And that's what the camaraderie was like. And it was, you know, a bit different to Sydney. Sydney's a bit dog eat dog. We weren't like that. We'd a bit almost in between Sydney and the old English ways, where you'd have to go back to the hosting club and have a drink after the game. I think Brisbane was very much like that, and that bonded a lot of guys together. And I've got a lot of great mates that played for all the other clubs over the years, and we're still great mates.
Is there a favourite, and I know this sometimes is an unfair question, a favourite player you played with, or one that you looked alongside and went, "Wow, you know, this is special"?
Meninga. You know, I've played in the centres for him for Australia, in the centres with Queensland, and people cannot understand how strong that guy was. And he just exuded confidence. Even at some times, I probably thought Mal might have underestimated his ability. But he was a super guy on and off the field, and just made you feel very comfortable and very secure when he was in your team. Very good player.
Out of everything you've achieved, is there a favourite moment on the field that stands out that, you know, you'd like to relive if that was possible? Whether it be the final minutes of a grand final win, or, you know, running on the field at Suncorp for the first time wearing the Maroons jersey, whatever it may be.
The grand finals are the ultimate because of the course of the whole year to get there. And I just wish I could relive both grand finals, because I don't appreciate it now, because you don't soak up the atmosphere.
What do you mean by that?
It's gone like that, and you're trying to think back on the day and going, say for the Bulldogs, going back to the club going in there, and the whole crowd erupting, and the streets were just, you know, littered with people and blue and white and very fanatical, as compared to the Broncos, where it was a whole city went crazy. I just would have liked to sit back and soak it up a little bit better and remember it a lot more. I can't remember where we went, you know, what we did. I do remember in the aftermath of the Broncos grand final, we had to get ready for a World Club Challenge. So you couldn't drink too much. Kelvin Giles was such a hard taskmaster, belted the crap out of us trying to get us fit, and half our team were in the UK with the Australian team. So, you know, it was a very lonesome time trying to get to training and just get motivated. But I don't know, I just, you know, the Rothmans Gold Medal was a surprise for me. Just all these awards, and you just wish you could go back and say, appreciate it, and sit up in the ceiling and go, wow, look at that kid go.
Yeah. Is there one game, Tony, that stands out for you that you'd love to maybe pull them back on again and play again?
Any game?
Any game. Any game you Currie that means more to you than any others? It might be a tough question.
No, I think that 89 game when everyone was busted and we beat New South Wales down there and in the wet, the damp, and we're down almost to 12 men, and we just kept repelling them, and when we went off, it was just such a satisfying game. Up against some of the best players ever to put a football boot on. It was great.
Speaking of that and the rivalry with New South Wales, is there a New South Wales player that you had that respected rivalry with that, you know, you still get along with today?
Gary Jack. Great mates. Connect all the time. Social media. Jimmy Jack was, he was great. Eric Groth was fabulous. I played with Eric Groth at Leeds, so I knew Eric Groth. Played against Sterlo when he was playing for Hull. So I'd played against these guys before I even made Origin. And you get a lot of respect from him. And the Guru is one of the best wingers I've ever seen. But Gary Jack, I think, is one out of the box.
Who's been the biggest influence on your career?
All my coaches. All my coaches have given me something. You know, I've got coached by, let's go way back, John Lohman, Greg Oliphant, Ron Raper, Warren Ryan, Phil Gould, Wayne Bennett, Arthur Beetson, Des Morris. I mean, fabulous coaches that give you something about them. You can't take 100%, but if you can take 10% of each one, it makes you a better player. But the coaches were the main. Some were tough, some were a little bit softer on you. I needed the tough ones. Warren Ryan was one of the toughest guys I've ever met. We trained till we bled, but we played like that as well. We were the dogs of war. And I came from that flamboyant style, you know, playing in Brisbane and Leeds, and and all of a sudden I had to knuckle down. If I didn't knuckle down, I wouldn't have got there. Even though I hated it at the time, I look back now, and Warren Ryan was probably the main person out of all those coaches that put me on the right path to becoming a centre and put me on the right path to becoming disciplined in my training, etc.
Is there a bit of advice you'd give to a young player coming through today that you think would help, and something that you may have been advised when you were making your way through?
If I had to talk to a young player playing today, now they're totally different attitude than when we were playing. You've got to take criticism. You have to take criticism. If you don't take criticism, you can't get to be better. And if you fall at criticism, then you're not made for it. So you've got to seek people that are firm in their judgment on how you play the game. And they'll tell you the truth. A lot of them want to piss in your pocket, but you've got to find the ones that go, mate, you didn't turn up on that play today. You didn't do that right. They're the people you've got to seek out. And they're hard to find.
And now, TC, now that, you're in the business world, you mentioned before a mechanic, got your own business, so that occupies a lot of your time. Is it harder running a business or playing in an Origin match?
It's harder running a business, Mark. I've had it for 24 years now. The business is like an entity. If you feed it, it grows. If you starve it, it'll die on you. And it's constantly taking energy out of you, and you've got to pour it back into. I wouldn't have it any other way. I've made a lot more money out of my business than I did out of rugby league. And it's a family business, which is fantastic because it keeps the family together. And I just think you can't put a price on that.
Did what you learn in football help you in business?
Oh yeah, my word. You have to have a good team. And the team's got to perform, and the team's got to be flexible, and you've got to cover for each other. You've got to put up defence, you've got to put up attack, and we're a family business. We are a great team.
Tony Currie, thanks for your time. Congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander Podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.